My name is Samuel Huff, and this semester for the Visualizing Peace project, I've been researching NGOs and peace building. In this presentation, I'd like to examine some of the existing literature on NGOs based on entries that I'll be adding to the Visualizing Peace library, considering how the work of NGOs can be visualized as peace and how it is visualized as peace, and then also analyzing some of the core structures, the core methods that NGOs use to build peace. So hopefully this will develop the literature on NGOs and the Visualizing Peace library, while also broadening dialogues of peace to include the work of NGOs. So these are the items that I'll be adding to the library. These kind of represent a variety of different approaches to NGOs. This first report, Images of Africa by Vandergag and Nash, 1987, looks at primarily at public perception of NGOs and humanitarian work based on publications by NGOs themselves and by the media in the aftermath of the Ethiopian famine in 1984. The next work, The Role of NGOs in Long-Term Human Recovery After Disaster, from Chandra and Acosta in 2009, looks at the NGO response to Hurricane Katrina and how NGOs specifically worked with the U.S. government in that situation, and then also the challenges that NGOs faced while working with the U.S. government. So the authors identify those challenges, look at solutions to those problems, and also create some policy recommendations for that to be implemented to help alleviate some of those challenges in the case of any future disasters. The next article by Ferdinand Song, Public Trust as a Driver of State Grassroots NGO Collaboration in China, similarly looks at how NGOs relate to governments, but this time looks at how organizations can preemptively focus on collaborating with governments, specifically local governments in China, in order to develop grassroots peace building and build trust with local communities. Walton's 2008 article, Conflict, Peacebuilding, and NGO Legitimacy, considers how NGOs deal with all of the different stakeholders that they interact with, and how NGOs can maintain their legitimacy amidst all of the different, sometimes opposing pressures that all of the stakeholders can exert on them, and how to also maintain legitimacy and also continue to do effective peace building work. And the last item to be added to the library is an NGO training guide for Peace Corps volunteers published by the Peace Corps, which comprehensively looks at how volunteers and workers in NGOs can effectively reach out to communities, build capacity in communities, and build capacity in other organizations, and then also contribute to the well-being of the organization that they're working for themselves. So ultimately, all of these articles kind of show that NGOs do contribute to peace, but the literature often describes the peace building efforts of these organizations without using the language of peace. So, for example, in Chandra and Acosta's article describing how NGOs responded to Hurricane Katrina, they use the term human recovery, which I think fits in very well with some of the ideas of inner peace, peace in place, and pockets of peace that we have in the Visualizing Peace library and in the museum. Authors describe this idea of human recovery as restoring social daily routines and support networks to benefit physical, mental health, and promote well-being. So I think this seems to be a very peaceful concept in NGOs that are pursuing human recovery would, I think, be classified as peace builders. But interestingly, they're using the term human recovery rather than peace. The word peace never appears in this article. And of the items that I'm looking at here, the only one that looks at NGOs and describes them as peace builders is Walton's article from 2008, which is the only one situated in a post-war, post-conflict context. So I'd like to look at how we can imagine, NGOs as peace builders in contexts outside of war and post-war environments to kind of broaden peace building to include more broadly, more of the work that NGOs are doing around the world. And I think the articles altogether neatly describe that at the core of NGO peace building work is the relationships that NGOs develop with governments, with various other groups, and with individuals. Both the Chandra and Acosta article and the Farad and Song article describe different ways that NGOs can relate to governments. Chandra and Acosta, as mentioned, worked with specifically with government policy and how kind of some of the barriers that NGOs face when they're working with governments, while Farad and Song look at some of the much more positive sides of NGO government collaboration in terms of building trust in local communities, doing grassroots peace building. But in both of these cases, a strong relationship with the government is essential for NGOs to be able to do effective peace building work. Some of the other groups that NGOs cultivate relationships with are their donors, various political stakeholders, interest groups, as well as other NGOs and the media. And as Walton describes, oftentimes these relationships, specifically with donors and other organizations, are what keep NGOs going and allow them to continue doing work in peace building. But the interests of donors and political stakeholders, as well as the influence of the media on public perception of NGOs, can distract or hinder NGOs from achieving all of their peace building goals. So the relationships that NGOs have with all of these different groups are important, but need to be balanced with each other and balanced against how NGOs want to go about achieving peace building. But in any case, the relationships that NGOs have with other groups, other organizations, are critical for continuing to promote peace building. And finally, NGOs work significantly with individuals and with local communities. So in the Peace Corps training guide, this is described extensively in terms of how individual volunteers can create one-on-one relationships in long-term peace building activities, as well as how the organizations as a whole can work with individuals and local communities to build up trust and continue to build relationships with communities. And it's that trust and those relationships that are the foundation for NGOs to do various other work. If they're doing work in education or health, none of that work is possible without relationships with individuals and communities. And as mentioned, one of the other groups that NGOs work significantly with have a relationship with is the media, as described by Vandergag and Nash. These, the media perception, the influence of the media on the public perception of NGOs is also critical, especially for gaining support. So there's, again, a little bit of overlap here between donors, the media, and public perception, and the individuals that contribute that are outside of NGO organizations, but contribute to their work. And then finally, the Peace Corps document also describes the internal relations of NGOs, their governance structures, and how effective team building is in creating a smooth running organization that can continue to carry out peace building. So in all of these areas, the relationships between NGOs and those around them are what allows them to do their work effectively. I think that NGOs are quite unique in their position as peace builders because of the services that they offer and the way that they offer those services. So a lot of times the NGOs are offering a significant amount of structural support that is quite life-changing, as government would, but in areas where governments can't reach, NGOs are there to offer a localized personal approach, which is quite unique, and especially in the world of peace building. I think because of the amount of NGOs and the number of areas that these organizations work in, they are incredibly valuable to look at, especially for our Visualizing Peace project and also for wider peace building scholarship. It would love to see a broadened understanding of peace that would include all the different work that NGOs do, expand that beyond NGO work in post-conflict situations, and kind of break away from the traditional understanding of peace only in relation to war, and look at how we can build peace on peace, and build peace outside of war, in many different areas. Thank you very much.